Thank you for joining us for this final broadcast of the night. I am here with the Mackenzies. My name is Adelie Dykes, and I am a part of the short-term missions staff. And we are here to discuss having seniors in our short-term missions program. So if you guys just want to go ahead and tell your story of how you got involved in missions.
Sure. It started several years ago when our first grandbaby was born. And we felt that God was giving us direction to go to Greece at that time. And being a married woman, I was allowed only to go for 6 months at a time because he was staying in the States at the time. So it was great flexibility with us, he staying in the States and me going. So I actually didn't make it for the whole 6 months. I got way too homesick, but I came home 5 months after that. But I ran their international school at that time, and I was their teacher there. And I would say it was probably, up to that time, the most phenomenal experience of my life. And my husband graciously allowed me to do that. Very few husbands are really that wonderful to let their wives do that, but he allowed to. Then when we were there, I was there with Brother and Sister Summers. They were working in the church at the time, and we had arrived at the same time, and we had to leave for our 3-month visa change, and we, by God's direction, went to Cyprus. And while we were there, just for 24 hours, God, we didn't know it at the time, but God had dropped in our hearts that Cyprus would be the next place that we went. So shortly after that, we went there. The Summers and myself and my husband once again graciously allowed me to go, and Global Missions allowed me to go for that 6-month period of time again. And we were able to start the first apostolic church there since Barnabas had been on the island. We met 4 Filipino apostolic women who had heard through the Filipino hotline that we were coming, and they stepped out in faith and they rented a church, and God put us together, and they rented the church, and then this Brother Summers became the pastor, and we were able to start the church at that time. Then later on down the road, as my husband was approaching retirement, then God once again gave us clear direction that we were going to go to Belize at that time. So I'll let you take over at that point.
Actually, having an opportunity to be a part of Global Missions has been kind of a seed planted in my heart many years ago. It started back in 1974 when I first came to the Lord. And I had an invitation to go to Frankfurt, Germany. I don't know, you folks probably don't know this part of the story. I had come out of the Episcopal Church, and I had a standing invitation from an Episcopal minister to go to Frankfurt. And so an opportunity came for me to go, and he had an apartment above a chapel, and he had Sunday school rooms in the basement. And what happened was, when I first got there, this is before we had gotten married, I went down to the Sunday school rooms, and I saw a sign, something like you put like open house, for real estate. And it said, United Pentecostal Church meets here. I said, well, what is this? He said, well, the United Pentecostal Church group uses the chapel, and I'm sleeping right above them. It was an amazing thing that God had orchestrated. I had a chance to be with Brother Wayne Nye at the time. We traveled the country of Germany, went to Kaiserslautern, the very first German-speaking church in the country of Germany, and that seed got planted. They had begged me to stay, but I was so new to the church, I didn't feel like it was the time for me to pursue that. And so over the course of time, the Lord had always had a plant of seed in my heart for missions. And then as we been faithful to the church for many years, but we always felt like there was something that the Lord wanted us to do. And I want to explain something. There will be times where you may be in a service. It could be a really any type of service, and often in mission services, where God will plant seeds in hearts. You need to water that seed with prayer. You need to take those things to God and ask Him, Lord, are you speaking to me? Are you wanting me to do something different? When it came time for me to retire from the corporate community, the Lord opened a door for us, and that's when Belize came to us. And we had this opportunity to go to the country of Belize. And when it first came to us, the Lord has amazing ways of speaking to you. He will lean upon your, open up doors for you. Belize kept coming up day after day. It was like, can you believe this? I don't even know how to spell it, let alone know where it is. And so the Lord gave us understanding that Belize was British Honduras, and it became Belize. And so it became obvious that we needed to go pay a visit to Belize. And when we did, we had some preconceived ideas as far as what we might do or what the work would entail. And when we got there, we had the opportunity, Lord, to meet with some beautiful people, brother and sister Dwayne Abernathy. They've been working in Belize. They had a burden for the country. And it was clear that the Lord had called us to the country of Belize to help them. When you get involved in short-term missions, there's so many things that can take place when the Lord gives you a burden. I had opportunity, Brother Dwayne Abernathy had asked me to help teach the GATS classes, the second level. Now, we did not have a Bible school in the region of Belize that we were in. We had one up in the main city of Belize City, but we didn't have one in the regions in the southern part of the country we were. So we had to go to the villages. And to go to a village, let me try to explain this. You may have to travel 40 minutes. You may have to travel an hour and 40 minutes. You may have to travel 2 hours to get to a Bible study if we're doing a study that particular night. It was one of the most treasured times of my life when we had the opportunity to do a study of men that wanted to come, that wanted to learn how to become part of the ministry. I can go on, but I don't know if you have another question.
You said that she had a special circumstance of going before you were able to retire. Whenever you joined together and go to Belize, how did that change how you ministered in short-term missions when you were together?
Each one was completely different. When I was in Greece, I was running an international school, and I was the teacher there, but I'm glad you said that because I want to backtrack just a little bit. Sometimes we think we don't have any special ability to go on the mission field. Whatever your life experience is what God has put into you to go on the mission field. I had homeschooled my children in ACE and never thought a thing about it. And when I called headquarters, Brother Patrick, who's now deceased, happened to answer the phone. And if you ever knew Brother Patrick, he made real split-second decisions. And he happened to answer the phone because the secretary was out. And he said, I didn't even know the questions to ask. I just knew I had this burden that was either go or I felt like I was going to be crushed by it. Look, Lord, send me, or this burden's going to crush me. And when he answered the phone, I told him my name, and I said, I don't even know what to say to you. I don't even know what questions to ask. And I said, but I feel like I'm supposed to go on the mission field. I didn't know what else to say. He said, well, Sister Mackenzie, we have an urgent need in Greece. How soon could you go? And I'm like, wait, isn't there lots of red tape and difficulty and they give you a hard time and prove yourself? And no, it wasn't like that at all. And I said, well, this is November. I'd like to at least wait till Christmas. And he said, he said, we have an international school there. He said, do you know anything about what did I just say the school was? ACE, yes. He said, do you know anything about ACE? And like the light bulb went off, and I went, yeah, I do. That's how I've homeschooled my children all these years. And that's what was my preparation to go onto the mission field for the first time. Then the second time in Greece, or in Cyprus, it was completely different because we were working with a brand new church work with Filipino women. So that looked totally different. And he did come and visit me a couple times, which was really nice. And then for the third time in Belize, it was completely different again, because now we're working with Mayan people in the rainforest. I'm teaching children and women, and he's teaching the men. So every time it was totally different. And yet our equipping, even in as brand new saints in the church, teaching Sunday school and training my children in ACE, all of that equipped me to go on the mission field, because now I'm teaching all kinds of Mayan children, and I have all these skills as a Sunday school teacher. He taught many Bible studies and men and Bible studies all down through the time. So he was well equipped to teach these Mayan men the GATS program.
Brother Mackenzie, she kind of just touched on it, but I wanted to ask how you felt that your strengths in the corporate world or in the job or the ways that you served in your church, how those were a preparation for you to go into short-term missions.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is in the corporate community, you learn that there was goals that the corporation had set up. And we understand that there's the mission of the church, the goals that we have. And everything that we do has to be able to point to us fulfilling that mission. It is one of the most treasured times that you could have in your life, is when you know that you can share something that God has given you. And God may give you an understanding to how to share it with people so that they would not only just learn the knowledge, but be able to apply it to where they're at. It was, understanding their culture, understanding if they would trust you, trust your word, if they would receive what it is you've given. And of course, you have to back all that up with prayer, which is what we did. And it was an amazing time that we had there. There was the men that came. We would go into a church, and you may have one light bulb. That's all you had to work from. And you're trying to train these men that have committed themselves. They want to be part of the ministry. And the Lord would give me understanding, okay, this is how you need to reach these men. He would give me an illustration of something that I could share with them that they would be able to take home with them.
Can I touch on finances for a minute? A lot of times we think the finances are going to hold you back also. And it was the same thing each time that the finances came in a completely different way. We never had a lot of money to back us up to go. The very first time, it was the church and God's people supplied the first amount of money. And then there was a wonderful family that was not of our denomination that just happened to love us and know us. And we went over to their house for dinner one night. And at the end, we were just saying goodbye. And I saw the husband and wife exchange looks at each other. And I'm like, what's going on? And she said, would you just wait a minute? So she ran back to the bedroom. She came back. She had an envelope, and she handed it to her husband, who handed it to my husband. And it was stuffed with money, mostly $1 bills. And it was almost to the penny the exact amount of money that we needed to finish to go on that trip. And we never even asked them for anything. Never did we never asked anybody for anything. People would just feel the burden to give it to us. And then in our third time, what we did is, because he was retiring, we actually thought that we would go Belize and possibly not come back. And we sold everything. We sold everything in our house. We sold our homes. We sold our cars. We sold our furniture. We sold everything. And when we came back from Belize, what we owned in the world were 4 suitcases of clothing. But we went to a garage sale when we came back to the United States. And for under $2,000, God put everything back into our house and our garage and a riding lawnmower and scouring powder. Everything that we needed, because we had nothing but 4 suitcases of clothing. So whatever God calls you to do, He will equip you to do it. And missionaries will tell you this over and over. Don't worry about the finances. And that's easy to say, but we've lived it over and over. Don't worry about the finances. God will supply that.
Amen. That is so true. We only have a couple minutes left. Would you mind telling a word of advice for those that are approaching retirement or in retirement and still wanting to serve the Lord in this capacity? What advice would you give to them?
I would certainly recommend get out of the retirement mindset. It is a decision that when we made the decision, everything seemed to work. It was, there is such huge needs everywhere. It doesn't really matter what country or what nation or what people, there are needs everywhere. And if you have an opportunity, if God's given you the strength, if He's given you the wisdom, He's given you the understanding, you understand His Word, there's a huge need and an opportunity to serve Him, and the rewards are great. I can't even begin to tell you what happens when you serve others, what happens to yourself. You will go through a change that maybe you haven't ever expected to happen in your life before. But everything that God has put in you, He wants to use that for His kingdom.
When you reach our age, you have a lot of experience and maturity behind you. So go out and use it. Go out and use it.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. I've loved hearing your stories for myself, and I hope it's been an encouragement to those who are watching. This is our last broadcast for the night, so I hope that you will join us tomorrow for our next broadcast, and I hope that if you are a senior that you would consider and prayerfully consider spending your retirement on AIM.